Hello snowboarders of the internet, I am your host TC, and today I will be reviewing the K2 Passport. This board is equipped with K2's directional camber profile, so what that means is you're going to have a long rocker section in the nose with camber underfoot and a tiny rocker section in the tail. So translating that to actually what it means is that rocker section in the nose is going to help with float and ease in and out of turns, where that camber is going to provide all that stability that you're looking for in those variable terrain with nice little pop there when you're awling, that sort of thing. And then in the tail with that tiny rocker section, that's just gonna do just like the nose is and help with turning and getting in and out of those turns. This board comes in a 146, 149, 151, 154, 157, 159 wide, 160, 162 wide, and a 163 for the big dogs. I use this board at Arapahoe Basin, where the day before, you guys probably saw this story, it was closed for the first time in 5 years. They got so much snow, they had to close. Pretty much that day when we got there, it was dark. It turned sunny later in the day, but top of the mountain, no snow. It pretty much looked like it hadn't snowed in weeks there, just pure ice. As you move down the mountain, it got better, but still very variable terrain where you'd be taking just a beautiful edge into something, just a great pow turn, and all of a sudden, bam, iceberg. Like, it felt like the Titanic out there. Everything's smooth sailing, and all of a sudden it's not, and you're getting bucked around left and right. There were some good spots that everything deposited to, but those spots were super hard to figure out and find. I used my Ride Fuse boots and Jones Mercury bindings. When we're talking overall flex of this board, it's a little stiffer than the middle of the road, I would say. But when you work your way up to the nose here, it feels about the middle of the road, where it is definitely going to be softer than underfoot and that tail, where your tail is actually going to match the overall flex of the board a little bit better there, where you get a little bit more landing gear back there. When you torsionally flex this thing, it isn't that hard to. It's about the middle of the road, so engaging that edge isn't going to be too tough for you. When you're in a full carve and everything, you feel this bad Larry want to flex right in between your feet to get all of that effective edge. Now when we're talking stability, it feels very stable underfoot, but it's not going to be the dampest thing out there, I would say. It's definitely damp, but it has more lively tendencies to it, where it wants to snap in and out of those turns, but it still absorbs all of that chunder and chatter when you get into those big pushed out zones. You're not getting extremely bucked around, but on those icy spots, you might feel a little buck going on. When you're getting this thing in the air on groomers or on powder, it does feel really good, where you can load up this tail and pretty much pop it whenever you want. It's not going to be super snappy, I would say, where you get bucked around, you get thrown forward or something like that, but you know it's going to be there. It provides really good landing gear as well, especially in the powder. You can land bolts on it in powder. I would say try not to, but you can still try to muscle that thing out where you're not going to instantly tomahawk or anything like that. When you load it up to ollie and pow, it does load really well, where that nose stays up, that tail sinks, and almost creates its own launch ramp for you, where you're not doing all that work, you're not getting sogged or bogged down by all of that fresh pow. When you do end up landing in pow, it does feel very stable, where it doesn't want to dig in on one side or the other. It wants to land flat and keep going straight, so you're not going to hopefully get hooked up on your heels or your toe side or anything like that off a nice little drop there. While you're here, make sure you like, subscribe, click that bell, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss any new videos we have coming out. This thing's actually pretty fun to butter in powder. Like when you're buttering on the nose here, you do have a pretty nice sweet spot on it where it feels extremely stable. I would say right at this K2 logo is where that sweet spot's gonna be. So shift your weight, throw your hips a little bit more on this guy, get it right over the tip of this logo here, and it's gonna hold for you. It doesn't really wanna sink in or anything like that. You'll feel some resistance. So when you're exiting that butter, expect a little pop out where you're not just gonna dig in or anything like that and under rotate. When you're buttering the tail, it's not gonna be the same really at all, I would say, where You have a lot less surface area, a lot less rocker on it. So it's gonna be a little bit harder. You're gonna wanna shift those hips and all your weight over the tail here. I will say when you're buttering the tail in powder, it does wheelie extremely well. This thing drops in, that nose pops straight up, and it holds pretty well. You're gonna lose a lot of speed doing it, but it's extremely fun, I would say, where it'll pop you right back out and you're just cruising along where you don't really have to worry about going back end over end on it. This board surprised me carving, I will say. Like, I didn't expect it to be able to hold an edge quite as well as it did, just because, I mean, you look at the Alchemist, that thing's a beast. It'll hold an edge through anything. This one will to a lesser degree, I would say, where you'll still be able to hold those long carves through chop and chunder. It might not be as big of chop and chunder, but you're still gonna make it through comfortably. Same with those medium carves. It does get edge to edge nice and quick, where you can avoid any fat skiers, anything like that. When you're carving it in the trees, it does wanna pretty much wiggle around those trees with no problem, where that tail will sink, that nose will float, and it's just like driving a nice, easy boat there. When you're Euro carving it, feel free to get low and just keep that weight right in between your bindings here, and it'll Euro carve for you. It did even push through some of that minimal chop and chunder still on a Euro carve without getting bucked around or having that nose fold like it can sometimes. Rider in mind, this board is for somebody that wants to get aggressive but still wants to be able to take a few runs off and just relax. This guy is going out there, they're probably hitting some cliff drops, they're looking for all that fresh powder, but at the end of the day, they probably have a family that they have to go back to, so they're not gonna be pushing their limit quite as much anymore. Why don't you support us further by heading on over to Angry Snowboarder VIP? Sure, I could explain it here, but we have a great video over there getting into it really in depth. I really enjoyed this board. It felt like the little brother to the Alchemist that still had something to prove out there, but honestly, it was fun. Like, it felt right at home to me, where I didn't have to really get aggressive, stay low the whole time on it. At some points, I could just stand up and just relax, take a look around, and really enjoy the scenery on this board. I enjoyed it. It was great. It'll handle pretty much anything you put in. And like, if you're not a super into it snowboarder or somebody that really needs to charge super hard, this would be a great board for you that you can go out there, impress your friends and family on, and still have a really good time doing it. Comparable boards, the Borealis Artefact, the Ride Moderator, and the Salomon 6-stick. Binding recommendations, the K2 edition, the Salomon Hologram, and my personal favorite, the Jones Mercury. This has been my review of the K2 Passport. If you enjoyed it, make sure you go check out one of the videos for the comparable boards.